15 minutes of heaven we call the D1 Baseball CWS Finals Preview, Game 1 edition. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. I am joined by the creator of college baseball Woj Bombs, Kendall J. Rogers. Kendall, how are you? Top of the morning to you.
I'm doing well. Thankfully, I do not have any texts waiting for me when I woke up this morning, so that's a positive. Aaron looks different today, by the way.
Yes, he does, because Aaron is not Aaron. It is Lord Stitchhead, the seal of college baseball, wearing that shirt, Stitch, James Bond, hum you.
That's legit.
Yeah, I kind of dig it. I got it as a gift, and I just figured if I can't be Aaron Fit, I can't have a full head of hair, can't have a good beard, at least I'll wear a cool shirt. So that's the best I can do to imitate Aaron, or to come close to emulating Aaron Fit.
Eric, is your middle name Zebediah, just like Aaron's?
Yes, it is. Isn't that ironic?
Aaron J. Fit, but the J is pronounced Zebediah. It's a very interesting birth certificate. Stitch, you did replicate the bias sign, which I
love that, actually.
Yeah, I got to have something that comes close to honoring Aaron. So there it is. There's my bias sign.
Bias,
which I thought at first it spelled out blast. But
yes.
So there you go.
Yeah, they do. They spell biased really strangely in the Carolinas, but God bless them. Boys, let us, before we begin the festivities, let us say thank you to our postseason presenting sponsor, who is Wilson. If you're at the College World Series for the finals, definitely check out the Omaha experience in the Baseball Village. You've got 4 of your favorite baseball brands under one roof: Wilson, DeMarini, Louisville Slugger, and Evo Shield, which is the shirt that I'm wearing today. It's really awesome stuff. If you're not in Omaha, you can follow along with us, and there will be new releases from Wilson throughout the College World Series. So thanks to those guys. This has been a blast. Boys, let's play the feud. Let's preview this deal. So we've got OU versus Ole Miss. Stitch, there's no D in Ole Miss.
Oh, there is not.
Boy.
Teachable and coachable. Yes, we've been saying it Old Miss for 50 years, but that's
not we. You.
That's bad.
Me.
Yeah,
that's right. At Mike_Rooney has been saying Old Miss. Yes. So we're trying to be better. So boys, let's talk about we'll probably be more focused on game 1. Kendall, why don't you kick us off? Give us some initial thoughts on this deal.
My initial thoughts is, I think when you look at these two offenses, the one thing they've done a great job at in this tournament so far is working counts. I think if you look at Oklahoma, it just seems like, 1 through 9 in their lineup, like those are all really, really tough outs. And I'm not sure there's a tougher kind of area to navigate in that middle of that lineup with Peyton Graham, Jimmy Crooks, Tanner Treadway has been awesome here. And so I'm just curious to see, how their offense looks. And also, Jake Bennett of Oklahoma, the talented lefty, against Ole Miss's lineup. Bennett's been, was terrific in his first start out here in Omaha, and he's had a long layover, and so I'm kind of curious to see him against Ole Miss's obviously high-powered offense.
Sir Stitch, what are your thoughts on this joint?
Well, I think I'll be the obvious guy. Ole Miss can't throw out Dylan DeLucia today, which would be great to see him matched up with Jake Bennett if it could be in a perfect world. And I guess we just got word that Jack Doherty or Doherty, however you want to pronounce it. You guys
I don't know where you're from.
That. He's going to start, it looks like, and he's only had 3 starts on the year. Runes, you said he's been really, really tough down the stretch. This is one of those moments, kind of alluded to it in my article the other day, but you kind of need a Michael Roth type of performance to come out of the woodwork. Yeah. I wonder if we'll get that from Doherty today, going up against Jake Bennett. Tough matchup. I just think, it's, to me, the better rested team, OU, obviously. I'm kind of stating a lot of the obvious things, but it's things that need to be brought up. And just the way Peyton Graham and Tanner Treadway have been hitting up here in Omaha, it seems like they've gone 5 for 5 each game. They haven't, but it just seems that way. So I think that's kind of the obvious thing. Let's see what Doherty has. Let's see what he can do against that lineup. Like Kendall said, the middle of that lineup has just been so good with Graham and Treadway and Crooks kind of coming up clutch here and there. So be interesting to see what happens. Do we get a transcendent performance by a guy that hasn't really been called on yet here in Omaha? Sometimes those things work their magic when they get out on the field in the finals. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing for me, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say real quick. I mean, the other interesting thing for me is like if you're Mike Bianco and you're obviously you're kind of planning on whole staffing if you're starting Doherty. So it's just like if you're Mike Bianco, like what do you do with your bullpen, right? Like if Doherty gives you 3 or 4 and it's still a close game, like do you throw Mallets and do you throw Brandon Johnson and then potentially only have some of these other guys like Mason Nichols for tomorrow? Just how he kind of works that bullpen is going to be really interesting. I think ideally, you would like to try to get 4 or 5 out of Doherty. If you can get 5, I think that's a big win for Ole Miss.
Yeah, good point.
I love the Michael Roth comp too, Stitch. You're right.
For sure.
This is absolutely how this works, is that guys come out of the woodwork. I just looked up Doherty's stats. And by the way, if you were a person that said Old Miss, you would say Jack Doherty. But since none of us are that person, we're going to call him Jack Doherty because he plays for Ole Miss. But Mr. Doherty, 6 of his last 7 outings scoreless, and most of them been more than 3 out outings. But I think you're right, Kendall. The other thing that's been an interesting theme in this College World Series is guys getting a couple bites at the apple to get comfortable. I think about Nathan Detmer. I think about David Sandlin. I think about Zach Morris, where they really struggled, like bad first outings, and then really good second outings. So I think it's a great point you're making, Kendall, about Mallets and Johnson. If I'm Mike Bianco, I probably want to get them a whack at this thing game 1, but get them in and out. Now if it's a blowout, no. But I think if I'm Mike B, I'm thinking these guys got to throw in 2 games for us to win this deal. Stitch, you mentioned Graham and Treadaway.
Yeah.
If you're Ole Miss, you got to contain that. Like these guys have been running hog wild, no pun intended, in the College World Series. And it's at some point, if you're going to beat Oklahoma, you got to contain that. I think a couple other things that I wrote down were, Hayden Dunhurst versus the OU running game, super fun that's going to be really fun to watch. I think Dunhurst is an elite defender, especially the way he receives the ball. He's got a great arm. He has not had a great year, but I think he's been better down the stretch. If I'm Ole Miss, I want to force Trevin Michael into tonight's game. If I'm Mike B and Mike Clement, who runs the offense for Ole Miss, I want my hitters to see him a bunch of times. And Skip Johnson will accommodate that, right? Like he'll go to Michael early. But if this is going to come down to game 3, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, I want my hitters having their second or third at bat against Michael because he's really, really stinking good. And then the last thing I had for you guys is I think this is kind of must win tonight for OU. I'd be curious your guys' take on this, but I think if OU wins this, it's almost mandatory that it includes a Jake Bennett win. What do you got on that, KR?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Here are 2 other thoughts here is it'll be interesting to see, Jake Bennett against Ole Miss's offense because Ole Miss is a little different than A&M. OU played A&M twice, and A&M is one of those teams that if you look back at the Sandlin start, they literally take every first pitch. Like Ole Miss is a lot more aggressive. That's not to say they won't take pitches, but they're not just going to let you throw 92 down the chute on pitch 1 and they're not going to swing at it. So it's a little different approach. I think the other thing for me too that gives me a little bit of faith in Oklahoma, at least in this first game, is, I thought it was interesting, here in Omaha, when a team wins their first 2 and they get a couple of days off, you kind of wonder how they're going to respond just because, you're red high. I feel like if you're a coach, you want to keep playing. Well, I thought OU, even with a couple of days off, they came out against A&M and played really, really well. So that gives me a lot of confidence that even with a couple of days off for them, they're still going to continue to play at that level.
Yep. A&M or OU is like this really good team that is playing really good. Like that lethal combination. So, Stitch, who's going to win the stands? Who's going to have better crowds here, Ole Miss or OU?
Oh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. It's Ole Miss, of course. They'll probably bring, kind of like last year with Mississippi State, they'll bring the rest of the state of Mississippi, except those people around Starkville, and probably fill up the stands. And not just to kind of ratchet it back just a little bit. Runes, you stole my key to the game about the way Dunhurst handles that running game. That's going to be great. The other thing I was going to kind of throw out there is Oklahoma, as good as they've been, and I saw them at the Big 12 tournament, and they were hot. They won all 4 games, and since then they were my pick. Since then, no matter where they ended up in the regionals and super regionals. But the other thing I was kind of looking at is just how cold the bottom of their lineup has been. I think one thing that OU kind of should need to do, get Kendall Pettis has yet to get a hit. He's their 9-hole hitter. Wallace Clark has gone 1 for 10 so far. Jackson Nicholas, he had a great first game, little cooled off since then, but I think the bottom of that lineup is something that has to be a key
a great point
for that one. Yeah, and again, that place is going to get back to your original question though, Rudes, that place is going to be all Rebels. Whatever that hottie toddy thing they say is, we're going to hear that a million times. But nothing seems to really phase OU too much, and I think that's why that's what I like about them.
You know, another key, guys, is go ahead, KR.
No, I was going to say I'm actually very curious to see, like, you know, how many fans OU has here, you know, because they haven't had a lot here in the, you know, in the first week or so. But like, it's not like Norman and Oklahoma City's a, you know, very far of a drive. It's what, 6 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll just be curious to see if OU fans surprise us a little bit this weekend.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes. Should be fun. And Kendall, I want to reference your piece. You wrote a great piece on these are two head coaches that, you know, we think very highly of, but have taken a lot of heat, you know, and, you know, Mike Bianco for, you know, Ole Miss has lost game 3 of a super regional under Mike Bianco. And this is only their second trip to Omaha. Now I use the word only. I mean, Mike Bianco is the founder of Ole Miss baseball, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
This went from, you know, a really cool school in the SEC that just sponsors a baseball team to one of the top 5 fan bases in our sport, you know, one of the top 5 venues in our sport. And for OU, you know, there was these whispers, you know, is Skip Johnson the right guy to take OU in to the SEC? Well, I don't know about that, but he's the right guy to take them into the CWS finals, which seems pretty good, right? It feels like a good thing.
Yeah, that's a pretty big plus.
Yes.
And I'd forgotten that OU kind of had a really crappy season last year to begin with. So that's why they were so far off the radar at the beginning of the year. And Ole Miss was so on the radar with all of us, you know, as a top 10 team. So, and Mike Bianco, let me just say this real quick, guys, since I won't be able to do the next, because Aaron will be back, I guess, and I won't be.
No, we can do a little quartet tomorrow.
You're running it back tomorrow, Stitch. You're in.
Okay, that's cool. Tomorrow. But I do want to say Mike Bianco, who I went to LSU with, he turned that program around. Now you touched on that already, Runes. Turned the program around and always has, you know, the fans on his butt about, you know, not going to Omaha enough. But he's a great coach. Let's just face it. He's a great coach. And I think, you know, obviously the SEC, they want the next Nick Saban. That's what they want for every sport they have out there. So I think that kind of plays into it a little bit. But I think the Ole Miss fans should embrace Mike Bianco, especially after this week, obviously.
I mean, they've never been in a national championship game in any men's sport outside of football in the 1960s, or literally 1960, and I don't think that counts, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, and Stitch, I need to correct one thing that you just said. You mentioned OU not being on anyone's radar. Actually, OU was on Kendall's radar in the preseason, but I talked him off the ledge. I fixed that for him. I convinced him that he was wrong, and he's still yet to say thank you. But you know,
I will someday. You know, Eric does bring up a good point on Oklahoma, because you know in 19 they missed the tournament. In 2021 they had a losing record, and like a lot of people forget, like early this year, like they went 0-3 at Shriners. You know, me and Eric were there. They lost a series at home to New Orleans. They almost lost a series to Pacific at home. Like they were not very good like earlier this year. And so they've really, you know, from about it's almost like that meltdown they had against Texas and OSU in back-to-back weekends kind of made that team just go, you know what, like we're through screwing around. Like we're going to turn this season around.
Yeah. Good point.
Hey boys, we're not going to pass judgment on the new format yet. But at the end of this, I want to get your comments on the new format. I have to say, now that I'm home, even though there's a lot of laundry to be done, I am kind of digging Saturday night game, Sunday afternoon game, Monday night game, like that.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, that I'm liking. So
yeah, anyway. I dig that too. And I didn't have too much of a problem with them kind of contracting the bracket play a little. You do kind of like, I mean, as us covering the series, you like those days where it's just one game, which we had 2 of in past years. But, you know, the College World Series used to always be just compacted into 6 or 7 days. And we're not going to go back to that, obviously, with the Championship Series. But it is kind of cool to kind of get it all kind of done, the bracket play done a little bit quicker. I think that's, in hindsight, I do kind of like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Gotta love it. Well, since we are, in fact, the czars of college baseball, absent Aaron Fitt. We can decide later. So thanks again to our presenting sponsor for the postseason, who is Wilson. Love this T-shirt. They have been great. If you're in Omaha for the finals, check them out over in the Village. And for Stitch and for Kendall, we're out. Enjoy game 1 of the finals tonight.